Hello, BookTube. We're at the end of Nonfiction November, so it's time for me to tell you what I read for this month. I read a lot of great stuff, which is always nice, and a lot of Australian stuff, so strap in. I didn't get to everything I set out on my TBR, but that was more just a what was I in the mood for, whatever. I can't even remember what I put, what I said I was going to read, but anyway, let's get started. So there's like 12-ish things I've got to talk about. So the first thing I read was Troy Bramston's book on Gough Whitlam, a new like cradle to death book. I done a review about it. Check it out. It was a lovely read. And then I was like, oh, I'll do Watkins Trench. He was on the First Fleet, and it's on like the major first-hand accounts we have of the First Fleet traveling and like the early days of the settlement in Australia. And it was interesting. It's not as lyrical. It's very dry, I think. But in saying that, it's funny to see just how little they'd prepared, like in terms of just supplies in general. I thought that was really interesting, and the details he talks about too, just in general about what it was like, and yeah, just his experiences. I think were really interesting, and it's just again a great, lovely first-hand account. Both of them are very short. A complete account of the settlement at Port Jackson, which is in Sydney, and a narrative expedition of a narrative of the expedition to Botany Bay. Those like the two accounts he wrote, and they're very lovely. If you're interested, definitely check them out because it's always nice to read a primary source. So I read that, and then while throughout the whole month, really, I was finishing my reading of Montaigne's, where is it? Montaigne's essays right there. I have been reading Montaigne. When did I can't remember when I started, to be honest. It probably I picked up his complete essays because I was like, I don't want to do a short collection. I want to commit. And so for the last like I don't know month, I started picking it back up. I think I started early in the year, or whatever, and was doing like an essay a day, and it was very cute. But then I fell off, and I was like, no, I've got to finish it for Nonfiction November because it's such a flex to say I've read all of Montaigne's essays, and so I picked it back up in October or maybe even September, and I was just doing an essay a day, and I finished it in November, and that was really satisfying. Like, what do you want me to say about Montaigne? His essays are just incredible. It's I've got nothing to add that hasn't been said about his essays. They're just so stunning, and pick them up if you haven't. It's just such a lovely read, and it'll make you think. And he's just such an incredible thinker too. I read that. I finished that, so that's really lovely. And then I read The Life of Captain James Cook by J.C. Beagerhole, and this is like a good chunky 700-page book about the cradle to death of James Cook, one of the great explorers of the Western world. Incredible. Like, I was so shocked by how much I loved it. It's so well written. I love the pacing of it too. I thought it was so well done. All of his expeditions I thought really interesting. There's a lot of stuff I didn't know besides him in Australia, if I'm being honest. But even him traveling to like what would be Hawaii, and just what happened there, and also how he died too in the conflict. Just a very interesting biography of Cook. I would love to do now that I've read this. I don't know where to go next, really. I would love to probably do some of his diary entries or his accounts of what happened. I think that'd be a really interesting next step. But so, or maybe even like niche down and focus on one exploration at a time or something like that. But I don't know. This was just such a lovely read, and I'm glad I actually got to it. And then I read Dancing with Strangers by Iga Kalendin. This is become a bit of a modern classic of the last like 20 something years. It's a first hand non-fiction book about the early settlement of Australia. It was really good. I found it a bit biased in terms of it wasn't. It was a bit biased against European settlers, which I get. But I feel like if you're gonna do a non-fiction book about it, I think just be unbiased, really. There was some interesting first-hand accounts she had from first people in the First Fleet crew, and she did refer to Trench at some points, or Tent. I can't say his name, but it was very good. I can see why people love it, and I don't think I unhold it, but yeah, very good if you want to pick up a book about that. And then I read Buckley's Chance by Gary Lindell, whatever. This is a book about William Buckley, who um, was a convict. He was part of Napoleon's war. Then he stole a piece of cloth, and he was sent to Australia forever, pretty much, which is a wild punishment. But he escaped his prison pretty much, and was presumed dead for a good 30 years. But then 30 years later, they found him, and he was a part of a local indigenous community, and he had completely um, became one of them. We're talking, he forgot English, like he was that invested. I don't know how you can forget your native language, but he did. And it was like, we can't bring him back. Like he's beyond, we can't do it. So I just kind of left him to do his own thing. And it was a very lovely read. It is very much pro him, like pro Buckley, and I get that. And also, again, I wish it was a bit more unbiased. I think it was just stick to the facts and leave it like that. But I do think it was a lovely read. There are some more books about William Buckley and what went on, but I'll pick those up too. And then I read The Dig Tree by Sarah. Oh my god, I can't say last names today. Maring Gatoy. Oh my god, I can't even do it. Just look up The Dig Tree. The story of the bravery, insanity, and I can't read the rest of it. But anyway, one of my favorite books I read this month besides Captain Cook. This is about the exploration of, oh my god, I can't remember their names. I've got it right here actually. Burke and Willis are two men who were like, hey, let's travel all the way from pretty much Melbourne to the top of Queensland, and we'll see what happens because we don't know what's going on there. And they had a bit of camels. They had like 16 men and like courage, and it went awful. All of them except one person died. And it's called The Dig Tree because on the way back, because the two men, Burks and Willis, the two like main people who led the journey, died of starvation on the way up. So they didn't even get to see what they were on their exploration. They didn't make it. And what the crew done was on the way back, collect all the bodies and just bury them under a certain tree and put a sign up saying, hey, there's bodies here. And yeah. And that's pretty much it. It was a lovely book about. I've never read a book about their exploration because it's pretty famous. It happened during the 1860s, during the gold rush. So obviously, a lot of people coming to this country and exploring because, gold, and you want to look for gold pretty much. And so it was very lovely. A lot of stuff went wrong on this exploration. The weather was awful. They didn't realize that a lot of Australia, on like outside the coast and the more inland you go, it's a desert, like literally. And I don't think they were prepared for that at all. But at least one person survived, and yeah, it was a very interesting and well written book about it. And yeah, I loved it a lot. And then we're still sticking on some Australian stuff. I read The Last Woman Hanged, the terrible, hanged, the terrible true story of Louise Collins. She lived in the late 1800s, so like 1890s or whatever, and she, by Carolyn Overington. So I'm sorry, and pretty much, yeah, it's about Louise, and she was married twice. Two of her husbands were poisoned and killed, and she got accused, and she was trialed. And what's interesting is she had like a double-digit level amount of kids, and it was the book is pretty much her and her trial, and I love a good trial drama. And three juries dismissed the case, so they were like, no, she didn't kill her two husbands. So three juries said that, but the government, not even the government at the time because it wasn't federation yet, but the state was like, no, we want her to make an example out of her for this stuff. And so they've done a fourth jury, assessed the case, and they're like, yeah, she done it. And so she was hanged, and she was the last woman hanged in Sydney, which, fact of the day, I guess. Very good book. I love does a great job outlining Louise's life. I thought it was well balanced. I love there's the great bit at the end about the last couple of chapters about her family after, and like all of her kids and what happened with them. I thought was really interesting too. It's probably one of my favorite like true crime books I ever read. I have a awful history with true crime. It's not the best genre ever, and so it was a very nice refresher. And then I was like, I may as well keep reading even more Australian stuff. I know this is so boring, but I read Ned Kelly's Last Days by Alex C. Castles. I've read a lot of books about Ned Kelly. This is Castles wrote this as he was dying, and so his daughter came in to fix it, finish it off pretty much. And this is a nuts and bolts life of Ned Kelly, really solid. That's all I have to say. It's not my favorite. I would put it in my maybe my top three if I'm being honest. I still think I prefer Black Snake or um, Hunting Ned Kelly. I think that's what it's called by Daniel Duff or whatever. I can't remember the name of it. I'm sorry. And yeah, it was really solid. That's really I have to say. If you know the story, it's not biased, which I really do appreciate with Ned Kelly books. But it was a lovely read. It was short, and yeah, I can see why people will talk about this one. And then we've got two more left. I read Henry Lawson, A Life by Colin Roderick. This is the first Henry Lawson biography I have read of him, and it was just so lovely. It's nice when you find a nice biography of someone you read, like an author. It's just so satisfying. And it was paced amazingly. The writing was really well. It touched on all the main points of Lawson's life I wanted to be touched on. It just done its job, and it was a great nuts and bolts biography of Lawson. Lawson had a tough life. He was born during the gold rush, um, deaf as a teen. By the time he was a teen, he was deaf. Bipolar, crippling addiction to alcohol, bushman, so he traveled a lot, and just a very chaotic life. But just casually wrote some of the most loveliest verse I've ever read, and yeah, it was just a nice read of Lawson's because I'm planning to do over the summer in December, January, and February. We'll see how long it takes. I want to read all of his like complete verse or whatever because he never wrote a novel, and I would love to do just his all of his verse. I do have a collection of his letters that I want to do. I have that on my bedside table ready to go, and so that's probably the next thing I'm going to read, to be honest. But yeah, I'm really pumped to do some Lawson after this biography. It's really just inspired me to pick up Lawson again because why not? Lawson's incredible. And then the last thing I want to talk about I read was, as always, Julia. The letters of Julia Child and Avis DeVito. And this was revised by Joan Reederin. This is what do I need to say? It's Julia Child. I love Julia Child. She's one of my favorite people ever. Whenever I want someone to put on in the background, but I don't know what, I always put on her cooking. It's just so lovely. And I've My Life in France too is one of my favorite memoirs ever. It's just an incredible book, and this did not disappoint. It's pretty. Ava, was one of Julia's friends, and it's just them back and forth letters. It's so lovely. You get to just read about Julia and what she thought about day to day, politics at certain points, how she found living in France, cooking, to the point where she was talking about writing her first cookbook and her TV show that was starting to gain traction and slowly be aired because it's one of the first cooking TV shows like ever. I don't think it's the first, but I think it's like the first main cooking show on public TV or whatever, which is a big flex to have. But just these letters were so lovely. Julia, oh my, her personality just shines through, and it was just such a lovely read. And that's how I ended my nonfiction November. And so, looking back, I'd done a lot of letters and biographies, and I just noticed that, and I thought that was a bit interesting, because normally that's not my cup of tea, especially letters, but I do a biography here and there. But yeah, that's what I read for Nonfiction November. Let me know what you thought about the books I read, and let me know what you read for Nonfiction November. And yeah, thank you so much for watching BookTube, and I will see you next time.